Are you looking for all the latest live video tools, technology, tips and case studies? Well, you're in the right place here for Live Stream Insiders. That's what we cover on this show, which goes for about 30 minutes. My name is Krishna and I'm one of the hosts for Live Stream Insiders, and I'm delighted that you're here able to join me live, or perhaps you're watching on the replay. I'm on my own this week. I'm not able to be joined by Peter, who unfortunately is ill, so I will do my best to be able to share with you the stories that we've curated, but I also want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us as well. So you'll find us on Twitter at LS Insiders, or of course you can find us on Facebook in terms of for our show at Livestream Insiders. So if you do have questions that I'm not able to address and you comment on the show live, I will do my best to actually come back and answer them, or of course if you prefer you can message us privately, as I said, on Twitter or on Facebook. So we've got a number of stories coming up today. Particularly we're going to be looking at stories around Periscope and also Facebook, and what brands are doing in terms of using live video. So what I'm going to do is just going to check out to see if you've got any comments here at this point in time. And as I said, I will be doing my best to be able to share with you any stories that are coming up in terms of the stories we're going to cover today, and I'll also be doing my best to watch your comments as well. And those of you who are here in the comments, I know that many of you have got a lot of experience of live streaming, so please feel free. If you've got a story to share that's relevant to what we're talking about today, or even a case study, please do leave a comment about it. So one of the things I wanted to talk about first is a story that actually Peter picked up for us in terms of coming from Reuters. And this is about what do they know about live video? And they shared some really interesting information. Now, if you've joined us here before for Live Stream Insiders, you'll know that we curate all of the links. And at the end of the show, I will be posting a link to where you'll be able to get all of the articles and links to the resources that we're actually going to be talking about today. So in this particular situation, it's an article, as I said, from Reuters, and they're talking about their partners, their customers that they're working with in terms of what some of the benefits are that they're seeing of live video. And I'm going to refer to the article that they actually have, which is on agency.reuters.com. And as I said, that link will be available for you later, but I want to make sure that I don't do them a disservice. So let's take a look, and thanks so much for everybody who's joining us here live. I can see the comments coming in now. As I mentioned just before, I'm on my own this week, so I'm going to do my best to be able to watch your comments and also share with you the top stories. So this one, they actually go into the article and talk about they've been producing live content, for the world's biggest news stories around for broadcasters for years, so many, many decades. But they said what they're finding is there's a huge transformation happening in terms of when live stream content is delivered, not just on TV, but actually is moving on to, as they call it, laptops and also tablets. And of course, smartphones. Perhaps you're watching on a smartphone. Do let me know in the comments about how you're watching today, what device you're watching on. I'm broadcasting from a desktop, but I'm watching the comments on my mobile device or one of my mobile devices. And they said they saw a 100% year-on-year increase in digital lives used in the last year, which has made them rethink about what they know about live video. Now that's really interesting because I'm personally very interested in the future of live video, and I'll tell you why towards the end of the show, something that you might be interested in. So live streaming, they said, isn't a fad, and in terms of the Reuters Institute have documented the fact that 61% of digital leaders have said they're planning to focus on live video in 2018. Now, I don't know what kind of size of organisations they are or what sector they're in. I'm still seeing, certainly in the UK and Ireland, lots of organisations have yet to explore using live video. However, they shared in this article some statistics, which as I said, I'm not going to read everything out to you, so you can refer to it a little bit later on. In the screenshot that I'm showing you at the moment, it says on the graph, it shows 2 months of usage, so that's from January and February of 2018. of their live content by Reuters clients. So Reuters live content, actually how that's being used by their clients. And the orange line shows the broadcasters and the blue line shows digital publishers. So you can see there's a huge amount of content being shared there. But one of the interesting things that I thought was highlighted in the article, they said, scheduled live content consistently outperforms all but the biggest of breaking news stories online. And what they're talking about is something that you know about is going to happen. And when that's actually shared through live content, that outperforms even the biggest news stories. So, for example, they talk about the lunar eclipse in February significantly outperformed earthquakes, terrorist attacks, and historic peace talks with their client base. And they go on to explain why they think that is the case. And this, I think, is important for all of us who are creating live content. And I said, because digital lives in terms of actually works best if you can start building an audience well ahead of the event itself. So building that promotion, building that anticipation for it. So they said our clients knew months in advance when this live event would happen to the second. And that allowed them to plan a coverage strategy of complementary content, pre-promote the event, and build an audience before it even started. So I wonder how much more we could all do, or whether you're happy with what you're doing in terms of building anticipation for your live content. At the end of last week's show, because something had happened when I went live and something I saw in terms of the cross-posting feature being natively available, I actually did a live stream within an hour or so of Livestream Insiders, and I would rarely do that. Livestream Insiders is on at the same time every week. Of course, we could do a lot more in terms of promoting it. I actually promote it through Twitter, through my website. I know Peter shares about it as well, but I know that we could do more about it. What's interesting, though, is what they're saying here is about when you know there's an event that's happening. So that could be for some of you, and we're talking about retail as an example a little bit later on, but it might be in terms of for some of you, you actually are going to do, special sales. We've got certain events that are coming up. Maybe it's if you're, looking at, let's say, when it gets to back to school. Back to school is a huge time. And I haven't seen many live streams at all that I can think of in terms of back to school. I know we've still got kids in school, they're still doing exams at the moment, but people are planning their content and planning their promotions. And for example, in an Irish context, kids are back at school in August. Therefore, if you're going to do your back to school promotions, you need to be starting in around June time and July time. How about doing that? You actually could be doing something in terms of what's the best tech gadgets for them to go back to school with. Or it might, but for example, in terms of you've got events such as Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We've certainly talked about that on Livestream Insiders before. Christmas events as well. Again, if you're a retailer, we've seen lots of organisations do that. And that is known. You know what those dates are now. You know what the dates are in terms of those events happening, and perhaps there's an opportunity for us that we're not fully exploring. I'm just going to just check here to see if there's any comments. No, nothing actually in terms of making comments around that. So do remember, let me know where you're listening from today. Are you watching this on a TV? Are you streaming it in terms of over onto a mobile device? We'd love to know in terms of that, because that's what Reuters are talking about, is this huge uplift they've seen for their customers, their clients, in terms of using Reuters content through these other devices. They also said, never give people a reason to stop watching. What are you offering that will stop mobile viewers in terms of their short attention span from swiping away? So one of the things that we might do in the show is we'll often say, coming up later on, we're going to be talking about X, Y, or Z. Of course, you might have something exciting going on. Maybe you're doing a competition, a giveaway. Maybe you've got an interesting guest coming on. And so, again, what's the things that you can do to encourage people to stick with you? And I think this is interesting because we can absolutely learn things from large broadcasters around this. And the third thing, and this is something I always encourage, and I know it takes courage to do this, But they said success with digital live streams comes from pushing boundaries. And they said the publishers who've been the most successful with their digital live streams are the ones that are constantly experimenting. It could be unexpected live experiences. It could be about trying out new technology, going to a new location perhaps, maybe using 360 and virtual reality, or finding audiences where only digital is actually on offer there. And they then talked about an article in the article about the Washington Post, and they said, and I thought this was interesting because I hadn't realised where this event had been streamed to. They said the Washington Post had covered the Senate hearing of Mark Zuckerberg, and they said they produced a live show with multiple camera angles, split screen views, and expert commentary that was broadcast worthy. Now, of course, they're going to do it at a very different scale, but many of us who are small businesses might be doing so. But they said as well as streaming it on their homepage, where they've been successful expanding their live video coverage for years, they broadcast it on Twitch. I didn't realise that they'd broadcast that live stream on Twitch, which obviously has 15 million daily active users. So that was interesting in terms of a different way, different audience that they looked to take that content to. And they said, one live signal, but two different audiences to engage with. So they go on and talk about their platform and working with their customers. But I thought that was really interesting in terms of an example there from that organisation. So let me just do a quick check in terms of any comments. I'm still seeing, okay, so Anna's telling me here that she's actually watching on her laptop. And she's also watching on her phone as well. Really appreciate you being here with us, Anna, and thanks for letting us know how you're watching. So if you're new to Livestream Insiders, my name is Krishna Day. I'm one of the hosts of Livestream Insiders, and we cover in the show lots of ideas, tools, technologies and tips, which we hope is going to inspire you in terms of integrating your live content, be that in terms of for marketing, for social selling, perhaps it might be in terms of for employee engagement, it could be for customer support or even crisis communications. So let's take a look at a second story, and this story is actually coming from Facebook. There isn't a week that goes by where we actually don't have Facebook. I don't think we've had 1 week in the almost 3 years now we've been streaming in terms of talking about live streaming. Certainly for as amount of time that Facebook's been around, most weeks we've actually had at least one story about them. And this story is basically about what they're calling Facebook premieres. You might have seen me share about this if you're following me on Twitter during the week. And premieres is something that, in fact, is well known to you. We were talking about Twitch there. Twitch already has these that are actually going on. But what this is going to be about is it's actually going to allow us as publishers, as creators, to be able to release pre-recorded video as a live moment. Well, when I read this article, which actually was announced by Facebook, and it's been picked up in a couple of other publications, I'm thinking, well, we can already do that because Facebook's terms of service say that we can already stream pre-recorded content. But what we need to do is actually make sure that we annotate it and we tell people that it's live, because actually, they don't want to have content going out pretending to be live, and it's actually fitting into that part of that fake news story, which again we've spoken about a number of times on the show in the last year or so. So I thought this is interesting that they've obviously realised there is a place for pre-recorded content. And they said premieres brings fans and content creators together in a whole new way on Facebook. It actually can help publishers and creators build anticipation leading up to the debut of new videos and offer an opportunity to engage with audiences. And so that could be, you do something as a trailer for something coming up, or perhaps you want to be available to interact in real time against content that perhaps was recorded at a time of day that wouldn't be suitable for your audience to be available to watch. We know that Livestream Insiders being on a Sunday at 7 p.m. in UK and Ireland is not the most user-friendly time and viewer-friendly time, but we actually do have a loyal community. We appreciate those of you who join us here live, but one of the things that we want to be able to do is also make it available outside of that. So I've done some testing in terms of restreaming that content live, but being available in the comments. So I've used software, and I've talked about this on the show previously. And what we've done is I actually have streamed it onto a different location, let's say onto one of my own Facebook pages, and have been there in the comments to be able to answer things. But I followed Facebook's terms of service by saying that actually this was pre-recorded. So it's interesting that Facebook is now experimenting with this. They said in the article that we're testing this now with a group of diverse video creators, publishers and shows, and we're going to be rolling this out more broadly soon. It actually makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, though? If you think about Facebook Watch, which has been available for some time, what they said there is in terms of actually it might be something that you use for a trailer, let's say, for a Facebook Watch show, which is obviously scheduled episodic content that they're looking to do. So I'm not surprised that they're actually exploring this, but I do think it's going to be interesting for us to watch out for. And what does that mean? Will they change their terms of service? Because at the minute, they're saying you must say that this is pre-recorded. But this looks as though they're really looking to encourage more video content and for us to be able to do this. I actually see that Barbara say, I missed out on engagements and comments due to Facebook notifications. Okay, so Barb, you're actually picking it up from the restreamed. In fact, I'm simultaneously streaming to a number of different places. I'm watching the comments, though, mainly here on Live Stream Insiders, because I'm on my own this week, and so I'm just going to do my best, and I'll address comments that are actually on. I'm actually streaming this to a couple of other places as well, and so I'll be watching comments there a little bit later. It is a bit of a challenge to be able to live stream and produce a show and bring all your other content and watch comments at the same time, as I'm sure most of you know, because I know a lot of you here are doing live streams for your own organization. Let's take a look now, though, at a story about Periscope, but I will be coming back in terms of talking about Facebook in a little while. Peter and I met on Periscope. I know that some of you know that story, but that's how we first got to know of each other and our interest and our enthusiasm for live video. So we always like to bring a little Periscope story to you when we can. However, I have to tell you, I'm not as active on Periscope as I used to be. I jumped onto Periscope the first day it was available, and some of the features that they've actually building out have not necessarily been as important for me as they might be for other people. So this might be important for you if you actually are doing a lot of live streams there and you've got a lot of interaction. As I said, hand on heart, Periscope is not the platform that you'll find me on the most of the time. I'm rarely there. I watch content though, and I watch Twitter live streams too. But as a publisher of content, I'm not there so much. However, this might be of interest to a number of you who are watching today. And that's because actually what they've done this week is that they've actually expanded their super broadcaster program. And that's the way that actually as a broadcaster, you can be rewarded. So if you're broadcasting in Spanish or English or French, and you're in North America, Central America, or South American countries, or any of the other countries that were previously supported, then you're able to apply to participate in their super broadcaster program to get rewards. So perhaps that might be of interest to some of you if you've, as I said, if you're in those markets and also you've got significant engagement and interactions on your live streams. So if that's relevant for you, or perhaps somebody who you know in your network, make sure they know about the fact that they can now apply for it. You'll find that post is over on their Periscope stream in terms of on Twitter, but of course, as I mentioned before, you'll find all the curations in terms of content there, and a link that I'll be sharing a little bit later on. Okay, so thanks so much in terms of Anna that you're actually sharing and talking about the show. Really appreciate you doing that. That's very kind of you. And we love everybody who watches us and participates and shares their experience, be you here live or on the recording of the replay. We also replay the content over onto YouTube. So if YouTube's your platform of choice, typically on a Monday, you'll be able to get an archive of the recording from Live Stream Insiders here, initially broadcast on Facebook. So let's take a look at a little story here now in terms of the Facebook. One of the things that we've been talking about is monetization. So just as we were talking about there in terms of monetization in terms of for Periscope, what about monetization for Facebook? And this story was picked up in terms of via the Twitter account of Matt Navarra, who shared about somebody who's got an amazing over 14 million followers on his Facebook page. I'd not come across this person before, but one of the things that Matt was highlighting was that, you know, we've actually talked before in terms of the supporter payments, so supporting live streamers, and that's being tested with a small group of people. And he actually had seen one person able to do it. So I've given you a link to the Facebook page so you can have a look at it, but it probably won't work for you so well unless you're actually looking at it in terms of on a mobile device. So I checked this out, and the screenshots I've taken were done on my iPhone. I think it works on Android fine as well. So in this particular situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you in terms of this is Julius Dean or Dine, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He's a magician, and he actually shared in a live stream, which is what you can see in the image on your left hand side, that actually he was sharing about how people could become a supporter. So this is going to be how you can actually get exclusive content from him as a creator. As a magician, he actually was saying he's going to show you some tricks, but he also, interestingly, was saying, tell me what you'd like to find out about. Tell me what you'd like to have in this, you know, this area where you actually can be part of the, as he described it, his inner circle, his magic inner circle, even as he's a magician. And he said, when I watched a couple of his pieces of content from his Facebook page, that he'd been working with Facebook on this for a number of months. So we knew that this was coming. So this is the first time I've certainly seen it as well. And so when I actually then watched one of the pieces of content, which is where I can see this working on mobile, I'm not sure what's going to happen if you're watching on desktop, but actually when I was watching it, it then said, you know, here's what you're going to get. You're going to be able to be getting live videos, and further on down, you can actually see their full terms. Now, I'm in the Irish App Store with my iPhone, so which is why I'm seeing a payment there in euros. So I'm not sure what it will be for those of you who are in US dollars or in pounds sterling. You might want to check that out yourself if you can access his page. But it says for €4 a month, I actually could get access to his exclusive content. And so if I click on that, it then takes me in, because I was on my iPhone, it then took me into the App Store, where actually obviously I was going to give permission for a €4 payment to be going from, you know, my account and my card or whatever I've got connected to my App Store account there. It looked like it was going from there. Certainly the information that came up on my screen looked like it was going to there. Now, I'm not sure how then it actually then moves over onto Facebook, and then how it gets paid to Julius in terms of him being the content creator. But I thought that was interesting, because I know we've talked about it. We've talked about monetization. This is a test that's being done at the moment. And so if you've not seen this in action at all, then you might want to go over and check out his Facebook page. As I said, that link is going to be in the curation a little bit later on. So it's interesting to see how this is actually going to play out. And that might be something that's of interest. And what I got from the live stream that he did and watching the videos that he'd done talking about it was that there's some kind of exclusive place on Facebook. So, you know, maybe it's a super private group that's created. Maybe there's a different form. Maybe it looks different to groups. I don't know what it's going to look like, but that's where you'd be there for accessing his content. But he referenced the fact that it's a place on Facebook that you'd obviously be able to go. So I'll be intrigued to see how that works out. And if you've actually seen that, if you've seen that opportunity in terms of being able to be in one of those kind of contributors to people in that way, do let us know. We'd love to know what you see, or perhaps you're one of the people who've got access to this as well. Let me just take a look at in terms of any comments here. Sam, thank you so much. Or Sam Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you doing so. So thank you for everybody who's joined me here live, who's watching the replay. My name's Krishna. I'm one of the co-hosts for Livestream Insiders. A number of stories we've been talking about today, so you can go back and watch the replay, including what Reuters has learned in terms of with their clients about the power of live and what gets more engagement. That might be an interesting story for you. We've talked about a new update on Periscope, which may again be relevant if you've got a lot of interaction, engagement and comments and people following you on Periscope. And that last little update was all about in terms of what's going on with Facebook, and where we saw somebody there able to actually make use of that new feature that's coming from Facebook, whereas live creators, that you actually can have this exclusive content that you can deliver and be paid to do it. It's a little bit like many people have been doing with, for example, platforms like Patreon, but delivered within Facebook. So I really appreciate, as I said, you being here with us. I've actually got one main story to give you, but I've actually got a couple of quick tips that I also want to share just towards the end. So the other main story was an article that actually was published actually on LinkedIn, and it was published by Fritz Brunder, who's the CEO and founder of Brand Live. You might have followed some of their content. They work with enterprises, they work with organizations in terms of helping organizations go live, mainly from certainly the case studies I've looked at in the US. And it was interesting that he was actually publishing a piece of content over on his own LinkedIn profile. And what his story is about is basically about how organizations are now starting to develop studios for live content. So I know many of you who watch the show are already avid producers of content. And, if you're like me, then I'm a small business. So I have already realized that, for me to go live, I need to make it as easy as possible. For this show, I've got everything set up. I don't move my lights from one week to the next unless I have a different light coming in from the side, and I might find I need to adjust some things. But I've got things set up because if I'm going to go live from my desktop, I just need it to be easy. Of course, we can go live from our mobile devices. And what we're seeing here is that a photograph or an image that was from the article that actually Fritz shared in terms of how larger organizations are starting to build studios. So let me take you through a couple of things from that article. And they've been actually in production or as a company for about 5 years. And they said that their clients had started to express their interest in building better spaces for conducting live broadcasts. Now, many of us also might stream with a mobile device, and mobile devices have lots of opportunities for us to go anywhere and to actually, that's the main way that Peter, the co-host for me here on Livestream Insiders, does live video. He does it for his organization from a mobile device, and because he's out on location as a news organization, whereas most of the things that I'm streaming about have historically been educational content. So I'm showing how to do things. I'm sharing tips in terms of what you might do. Or we're actually sharing news as we're doing here, for example, or I'm doing an interview with someone. So most often I'm actually streaming personally from my desktop. And they said, having a space, and this is I completely agree with, it streamlines the coordination and the executions of the live events. It allows people to always know where they can go and what to expect when during a live event. The production equipment, as I said, for me, I leave things set up. I just move my mic and I move my camera, but basically everything is set up, and they said that it can be set in place and it can be stayed put in terms of, that can help you go live more often I know that helps me. That's why I could go live very quickly after last week's show. Everything was set up. I could go again. I didn't have to think about, oh, have I got all the equipment? Where do I need to set things up? And I'm seeing more and more people doing that. But it's interesting that this article was talking about organizations. And they said also it helps in terms of your consistency. So basically for me, that's about the quality, the production values of your light and your sound for your brand's live events. And it's a permanent studio that actually allows for you to also customize it. So that's why I think, for example, they were sharing in the article about actually how GoPro might be setting up their studio in terms of having it there with all the branded background. Interestingly, I'm talking to an organisation at the moment who's in professional services, and they're about to move offices. And they were saying how excited they were about the office move, and they weren't sure what they were going to do about with all of their space. And because we've been talking about video content, I said, you need to get some spaces in there that you're actually going to be able to easily run your video content, be that live video or recorded content. And they said in this article, they talk about the fact that they partnered with a household athletics company to build out a dedicated live streaming studio on their campus. And so that might be something that you want to explore. And it was interesting, as I said, that article was published by their founder and CEO of their organisation, and they actually go through a couple of examples of their other clients who are using it. But you know what? It did remind me of an organisation which some of you might remember. And remember Blendtec? In the early days of me trying to encourage organisations to actually think about using video content, Blendtec, who themselves see themselves as an engineering company, they actually, I remember the whole story when they went pretty viral in the early days of YouTube, when they were actually saying, will it blend? That whole series of content like, will it blend an iPhone? And will it blend X, Y, and Z? There's a whole backdrop to that story. But I remember in terms of some of the articles I read at the time, because it was their CEO and founder who actually used to be there with his safety goggles on and his white coat, you might remember, and actually putting different items into the blender, very expensive blenders, to see will it blend various things. And I always remember the iPhone blending that they did. But I do also remember in the article there that they said that they spent about $2,000 in terms of to equip their then video studio. So interesting to see that people are doing it live. Prior to video content, perhaps it might have been, those web conference rooms. I remember in offices, organizations I've worked for, we made sure we had all the equipment there ready for us to do live video meetings through web conferencing with, different units of our organization around the world. I think it's just that move, isn't it? We've moved from web conferencing into creating video, into creating live video. But interesting to see that article there from Brand Live. So appreciate them sharing that. Yes, Anna, you're saying that you love Blendtec. It was a really, really interesting kind of series of videos they did. And Carlos, you want to build those spaces, I'm sure, with your clients as well, just as a way to encourage people to do that. And it might be, the first thing you do is make sure they've got something like a simple roll-up banner with their branding on it that they can easily pop up or have up all the time and then just move it. And that they've got a couple of lights that they can put in place and they're equipped there. They've got their tripod there for their device or whatever they're looking to use, and make it as easy as possible. Because I think sometimes people are still a bit nervous about how much they might want to invest. But I think many of us here who are on the show will actually be able to advise people in terms of actually there's low cost tools to do that. And actually I've got lots and lots of resources on my own website, krishna.me, where actually you've got low cost tools that you can use for your live streams. Two quick things that I want to end up with. One thing that I mentioned last week, and just in case that actually you like to get really cliff notes in terms of what we cover, I know that for you to be with us here about 30 minutes on a Sunday, 40 minutes on a Sunday is a huge investment of your time. And we like to make sure we deliver some value and some useful content to you. But if you really want the Cliff Notes, you won't get them as hot off the press as you will do Live Stream Insiders. We'll often talk about things that have happened within the last 24 hours, as we did last week. Or it might be certainly it's the last week that we're actually picking the stories up from. So if you're happy to wait a little bit longer, but for some practical advice and tips, then you might want to take a look at the Alexa flash briefing that I've got now available called Live Stream News. It's typically 2 or 3 minutes long. That's it in terms of top tips and information in terms of that you need to be aware of in the world of live streaming. You'll find it on the US, the Canadian, the UK, the Indian and the Australian Amazon stores. If you've got the Alexa app on your device, on your phone, you'll be able to find it there. Or of course you can go to Amazon, as long as you've got an Alexa connected device, go to Amazon and do the drop down on desktop to where it actually says Alexa skills, and then you can find live stream news there. I hope that's going to be of benefit to you, because I know some people are really time pushed. That's also delivered as a podcast, and if you go to krishna.me/LSN, then you'll be able to find all the audio there, and also an archive. You can even watch it, listen to it there, because that's the one thing with Alexa in terms of if it's a flash briefing, it's a piece of news, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I'm also conscious that I'd like to have an archive there, which is why I've delivered the archive of the content as a podcast. So as soon as the new episode goes out, the new episode also goes into the podcast as well. So it's just a different way for me to be able to deliver you some tips and tools and information on live streaming in terms of into a different device that might be of interest to some of you as well. And then the final thing I wanted to mention to you is Mojo Fest. So those of you who are actually mobile journalists in particular, and really love creating content with your mobile device, then one of the things that you'd be interested to know is about Mojo Fest. Peter and I have been there for the last couple of years. In fact, we'd been streaming for about 9 months of Live Stream Insiders before we actually met at MojoCon version 2. So this is the 4th edition of this conference. It's in Galway. I have been moderating the live stream panel for the last 2 years. I've been honoured to be invited. I just heard this week I was invited back to moderate the panel on live streaming this year, which is why I said I'm really interested in terms of the whole story of what's new and what's coming up and what do we need to be aware of. And that's the topic of the panel. I'm delighted that Peter's going to be at the conference as well. And this time he's going to be on the panel, of course, on live streaming. So I'll be moderating Peter alongside some other people who are actually going to be on the panel or about live streaming. I don't believe they're going to be live streaming the event this year, just because of some different things that happen in terms of the way that the organisation's been set up now, because it's actually an independent organisation. It was previously part of RTE and their delivery of content, but I think it was just going to be as brilliant an event. It's just structured in a slightly different way. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll be very welcome. And certainly that's one of the things that we found. People have come literally from all over the world to Mojo Fest, as it's now called. And again, the link to that is going to be in the notes for you to be able to pick up. And people do literally come from Australia and South Africa and India and America and Canada to actually come and collaborate there and learn lots of new things. And there's also, if you're closer to home, maybe you're in the UK or Ireland or a little bit closer, you actually might want to look at the shorter passes, so you can just come for one day if that's of importance to you. And if you're a student or you know students who want to come to the event, let's say journalism students, they've also got pricing there available for that as well. Let's have a look in terms of any other content here that I want to share with you. I think that's it for the show in terms of all the content that we've actually been covering. I do hope that you might consider, if you're a mobile journalist, in terms of creating content in that way, that you might actually want to see us, Peter and I. In fact, Peter and I haven't even spoken about this because he didn't know that I'd been invited to be on the panel there to moderate the panel, I should say. So last time we actually recorded an episode of Live Stream Insiders from there. I don't know what news we're going to pick up there. I'm sure there'll be some things. So we may record an episode of Live Stream Insiders, or equally might just see if we can get a little bit of time. Last time it was really tough to get any time to record anything or to do some live streams because there was so much brilliant content. Talking about content, I hope you found this week of assistance in terms of the things that I've covered with you. There, of course, will be a replay for this available, as I mentioned, on YouTube, if that's your preferred way of getting the content. Or, of course, you can subscribe to us on Facebook, facebook.com/live stream insiders. And we'll be back at 7 p.m. That's 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. That's Pacific time on Sunday next week for the next episode of Livestream Insiders. Thanks again for joining us here and for all your interaction and for sharing and your ideas and your experiences, and of course sharing the show as well. My name is Krishna Day. I'm signing out for today in terms of this episode of Livestream Insiders. Until next time, hope you have a great week in terms of live streaming. And remember, if you've got interesting case studies you'd like to share with us, do just send us a message on Facebook, on Twitter, message me personally. We'd love to know if you've got an interesting case study that you'd like us to share here on Livestream Insiders. But until then, have a great week in terms of your live streaming journey.